The clock struck 12:02 a.m., and I sat in my car, parked a few blocks away from my apartment, staring blankly at the streetlight that flickered in the cold night air. I had just left my phone in the car, refusing to check it again. No point. Irene hadn't called. She hadn't texted. It wasn't the first time, but this time felt different. I didn't plan on doing this. In fact, I wasn't sure what I had planned. My mind was a mess. There was an unsettling stillness in the air that night, like everything in my life had just frozen. I couldn't pinpoint exactly when it had started, but the feeling had crept up on me, slowly suffocating whatever was left of our connection. You see, Irene forgetting my birthday wasn't a new occurrence. It had happened before, but this year, I felt it like a slap in the face. Maybe I had changed, or maybe I just couldn't tolerate the same old patterns anymore. I had tried, really tried, to let it slide. But this wasn't just about forgetting my birthday. It was the weight of it all. The moments when I had silently watched her drift away, and yet I stayed, hoping she'd turn around. It was 12:02 a.m., and I was sitting alone in my car on my birthday. Irene hadn't even noticed I was gone. She hadn't even bothered to ask, and I don't think I could have told her even if she did. There was too much anger swirling inside me. But the silence, this silence, it felt like the only thing I could control. I thought back to the morning, my last hope. I woke up like any other day, groggy from a late-night work session. Irene was in the kitchen, coffee brewing as usual. She had the kind of smile that never reached her eyes anymore, but I could ignore that. She handed me a cup, kissed me on the cheek, and that was it. No happy birthday. No anything special planned today. Just the mundane. Just the way it had been for months. She was still my wife in name, but was she really here? By noon, there was still nothing. No text. No call. Nothing that even resembled acknowledgement of the day that, at least to me, used to mean something. I had been pacing around the house, unsure of what I was waiting for. Maybe some sign. Something to make me feel less invisible. By the time I got home from work, the emptiness in the apartment was almost suffocating. The lights were off, the place quiet. No sounds of life. But that's when I saw it, the note she left on the fridge. It wasn't a birthday card, but a note for her mother, talking about a dinner she was planning next week. Just another task on her to-do list. No recognition of the fact that her husband, me, was sitting in that very apartment, completely alone on his birthday. It was like I didn't exist. I stood there, staring at the note. My chest tightened. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch a hole through the wall. But I did nothing. I just stood there. By the time I sat down on the couch, my phone buzzed. It was a reminder for my birthday, the one I'd set in advance, because I knew she would forget. I couldn't believe I had been reduced to this. I set reminders for my own birthday, so she wouldn't miss it, so she wouldn't forget. It was 8:15 p.m. when I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I couldn't stand being there, in that house, being completely invisible. I grabbed my keys, and I walked out the door. No note, no goodbye, no nothing. Just the hollow sound of the door clicking shut behind me. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I drove. For hours. The road was deserted, the night endless. I tried to focus on the road ahead, but my mind kept spinning. Was I overreacting? Was this something I could just brush off like all the other times? Or was this the moment I had to face the truth about us? I turned the car around when I reached the edge of the city. I had no plan. I didn't know what I wanted, but I couldn't go back to that house. Not yet. Not tonight. I pulled into the parking lot of a rundown diner. One of those places you don't stop at unless you're on the verge of breaking. I didn't even know why I got out of the car, but I did. I walked in, greeted by the smell of cheap coffee and grilled bacon. The waitress barely looked up from her station as I sat at the counter. Coffee? She asked, her voice flat. Yeah, black. I said, my throat tight. And, maybe just a slice of pie? She nodded, pouring the coffee. I hadn't realized how badly I needed to breathe. The coffee was terrible, but it was hot. I took a sip, staring out the window into the empty parking lot. For the first time in a long time, the silence felt comforting. It wasn't until I noticed the clock on the wall that I realized it was 11:50 p.m. My birthday was almost over, and I hadn't even heard from her. Not a call, not a text, not even a hope you had a good day. I laughed bitterly to myself. It was over, and I didn't know where to go from here. I didn't go home that night. I sat in that diner until the staff started flipping chairs onto tables, sweeping floors like they were erasing the day. The waitress, I never got her name, refilled my cup twice without asking. No judgment, no curiosity, just quiet efficiency. She probably thought I was going through a divorce or mourning a dead dog. Maybe both. I wanted to tell her. Actually, my wife just forgot my birthday for the 5th year in a row, and I think I might be married to a ghost. But I figured she didn't need the weight of that. I left a $20 on the counter for a $5 slice of pie and walked out into the early morning air. Everything was fog. The streets. My thoughts. Even my car windows were misted over like the universe was telling me to just sit in the ambiguity a little longer. I couldn't go back home. Not yet. So I did something irrational, something I hadn't done in years. I drove back to my old neighborhood, this little no-name street where I grew up. I parked across from the playground I used to haunt with my middle school friends, the one where I kissed my first crush under the jungle gym. The paint was peeling off the swings now, and the basketball hoop was missing a net. Time had gutted it all, like it does everything. That morning, sitting in my car, watching the sun rise over a broken park, I finally opened my phone. Still nothing from Irene. But what caught my eye wasn't the lack of texts, it was her location. Yeah, I know. I sound like one of those guys. The kind who checks up on his wife. But we'd shared our locations ever since that one winter she got stuck in a snowstorm, and I had to track her phone to find her. It was practical. Necessary, even. Except now it felt like I was spying. Like I was about to learn something I shouldn't. She was home. Had been since 9:40 p.m. last night. That part didn't shock me. What did was that her location history showed she had been across town earlier in the evening, around 7:30 to almost 9:30. That wasn't unusual in itself. She could have been at a meeting or running errands. But something about the address, it nagged at me. It wasn't an office or a grocery store. It was a residential building. A quiet one. In a part of the city we never went to. I told myself I was being paranoid. Maybe she was dropping something off for a coworker. Maybe her mom's friend lived there. Maybe. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Not when she forgot my birthday. Not when she didn't notice I didn't come home. Not when she still hadn't said a word. I drove back home sometime around 8 a.m. The streets were alive again. People in suits rushing to jobs they probably hated, dog walkers being dragged by Labradors, kids with mismatched shoes getting shoved into minivans. Life went on. Apparently, so did Irene. When I unlocked the front door, the apartment smelled like fresh laundry. That detail nearly made me laugh. The laundry. The one thing I usually do. She must have done it early in the morning before heading out. A peace offering? Guilt? A cover-up? Her keys were gone. She'd left for work. The place looked normal. Everything in its place. Her shoes neatly by the door. A half-drunk bottle of seltzer on the counter. The living room throw pillow she always folds in half was folded in half. Perfectly. As if the apartment hadn't skipped a beat without me. I walked into the bedroom and just stood there, staring at the bed. My side untouched. Cold. Her side slept in. I walked around to her nightstand, looking for what? I don't even know. A note? A card? Maybe she remembered this morning and left me something. A tiny gesture. Nothing. But then I noticed something odd. Dust. I don't mean general dust. I mean the kind of small, freshly disturbed circle where something had been and was suddenly gone. I leaned closer. Her nightstand had always had 3 things on it. A book, a tiny ceramic tray for earrings, and a candle. The candle was missing. Not moved. Missing. I opened the drawer. Empty. Usually, it was a chaotic mess of receipts, lip balm, random socks. But now? Clean. Cleared out like someone had taken things they didn't want found. I just stood there, feeling like an idiot. A cartoon character with question marks swirling over his head. Was I overthinking again? Reading too much into the silence? Into the dust? Into the fact that my wife didn't say happy birthday and didn't ask where I was? Or was I finally waking up to something I hadn't wanted to admit? Because the thing about forgetting someone's birthday, it can happen once, even twice. But 5 years in a row? That starts to feel personal. Like erasing someone on purpose. I sat down on the edge of the bed. I must have sat there for half an hour, holding that stupid ceramic tray in my hand. And I swear, for a split second, I thought, what if she's having an affair? I hadn't let that thought take shape before. It always hovered in the shadows, just out of reach. But this time, I stared it in the face. And it stared back. The thing about suspicion is that once it enters your bloodstream, it spreads fast. It seeps into your eyes, into your ears, into how you read silence. Suddenly, nothing feels normal anymore. Nothing feels safe. You start questioning every blink, every breath. You stop trusting the past, the memories, even your own thoughts. That's where I was, sitting on the edge of our bed, staring at the missing candle and wondering what it meant. Maybe it meant nothing. Maybe it was just a candle. But I knew better. That candle had been there for over a year. Lavender something. Irene lit it every night while she read, claiming it helped her sleep. And now it was gone. Not moved. Gone. And the drawer where she kept her junk, completely cleaned out. Irene doesn't clean drawers. She doesn't even pretend to. So either someone else had cleaned it, or she was hiding something. Both options made my stomach twist. I told myself I needed to calm down, that I was just tired, that this wasn't who I wanted to be. The husband sneaking around his own bedroom, noticing microscopic shifts in dust like some noir detective in a bad movie. But I couldn't stop. I went into the bathroom and opened the medicine cabinet. Everything looked the same at first. Toothbrush, eye drops, her expensive skincare stuff that smells like boiled lemons. But then I noticed the pill bottle. New. No label. I picked it up. No markings. Just a blank amber bottle with a white cap. I opened it and looked inside. Capsules. Pale pink and white. No smell. I took one out and placed it in my palm like I was waiting for it to tell me a secret. Irene doesn't take medication regularly. Not that I know of. I couldn't even remember the last time I saw her sick. So what was this? I considered calling her right then, asking directly. But something stopped me. Maybe fear. Maybe pride. Maybe I didn't want to hear the answer yet. Instead, I placed the pill back in the bottle, returned everything exactly the way I found it, and stepped out of the bathroom like I hadn't just uncovered a clue in a mystery I didn't want to be part of. I sat in the kitchen after that, making toast I didn't eat, just staring at the toaster as it cooled, wondering how many years I had spent in this house, missing all the signs. Not signs of cheating necessarily, just signs of disconnect, of being edited out of someone's life in real time. It wasn't until later that afternoon that Irene finally texted me. Hey, just realized I never saw you last night. Stayed at Marla's. Hope you're okay. Marla. I stared at the name like it was written in fire. Marla was her coworker, the girls' night friend, the one I'd met once, maybe twice, who always gave me that polite but distant smile like she didn't really want to know me. That Marla? She stayed at Marla's. Without saying anything? On my birthday? I didn't reply. Instead, I did something I hadn't done in a long time. I logged into our home Wi-Fi router's admin page. You know what's pathetic? I had to Google the instructions. I had forgotten the password to my own damn network. I used to be the tech guy in this house. The problem solver. The can you fix the printer guy? And now I was fumbling with login pages like a confused dad trying to install TikTok. But I got in. The reason? I remembered that our router keeps a short log of connected devices. If someone had been at the apartment while I was gone, someone she didn't want me to know about, maybe their phone had connected. And yes, I know this is the behavior of a man unraveling. I know, but I did it anyway. Most of the devices were familiar. My laptop, her iPad, our TV, even that ancient Kindle she never uses. But there was one I didn't recognize. Galaxy_S23_Peter. Peter? My mind blanked. I didn't know a Peter. Not one who had ever been in our home. Not recently. I copied the MAC address, screen captured the entry, and sat back like I had just uncovered something I couldn't explain. Who was Peter? Why was his phone connected to our Wi-Fi the night I didn't come home? And that's when it hit me. What if she hadn't forgotten my birthday? What if she had just assumed I'd be gone because someone else was coming over? What if me disappearing wasn't a shock to her, but part of the plan? It felt like my brain was folding in on itself. I wanted to call her and scream. I wanted to throw my phone across the room. I wanted to be wrong. God, I wanted to be wrong. But I couldn't shake the feeling. This wasn't about the birthday anymore. This was about something much bigger. And I was done pretending I didn't see it. The day after I found Peter's name in the Wi-Fi logs, I tried to act normal. That was the hardest part. Pretending. Irene came home around 6 p.m., carrying her usual canvas grocery bag and humming like nothing had happened. I watched her from the kitchen as she unpacked produce, placing a bunch of bananas in the bowl like we were still part of the same sitcom. The entire time, I was screaming on the inside. But I said nothing. She asked me if I wanted mushroom risotto for dinner. I said sure. She smiled. And just like that, the stage was set. I sat across from her at the dining table while she chopped shallots, her hair tied back, wearing that same faded shirt with the tiny tear near the collar. I noticed everything now. Every tick, every hesitation. The way she looked at her phone 3 times in 5 minutes, but never replied to anything. The way her smile would disappear the second she turned away from me. The way she didn't ask me a single question about where I'd been the night before. It was like she was banking on me not asking either. I watched her stir the pot, gently folding in broth, and I wondered, was she thinking of him while she did this? Was Peter a coworker? A secret? A mistake? Was he married too? Did he know she was? I didn't even know what I wanted the answer to be. I just wanted her to blink wrong, to flinch, to show even a crack in this performance. After dinner, she sat on the couch with her glass of wine and her usual detective show. Normally she'd ask if I wanted to watch with her, but not tonight. I stood in the doorway of the kitchen, just watching her, arms crossed, pretending to be casual. She didn't notice. Or she did and chose not to. It wasn't until later, when she went to bed and left her phone charging in the kitchen, that I crossed a line I hadn't crossed in years. I unlocked it. Her passcode hadn't changed. That almost made me laugh. She really thought I'd never check. Or maybe she wanted me to. Maybe this was some twisted test. Or maybe she really didn't care anymore. I didn't go for the texts first. I went to the photos. That's where the real stories hide. People delete messages, but they forget that apps like WhatsApp save images to your gallery. And there it was. A folder called Archived. Not a default folder. One she named herself. I tapped it open. At first glance, nothing looked too alarming. Pictures of plants, screenshots of Pinterest recipes, some grainy memes. But halfway through, I found something that made my stomach drop. A photo taken in our apartment. Same couch, same blanket, but a man's legs were visible, relaxed, one ankle resting over the other. Jeans, brown boots, and in the corner of the image, just barely visible, a book with the name Peter H. written in fine-tip marker on the inside cover. I stared at that picture for a long time, barely breathing. I knew that couch. I knew that book hadn't come from this house. I knew those boots weren't mine. But most of all, I knew the timestamp. The photo was taken 2 nights ago, the night of my birthday, the night I wasn't home. I didn't know what I was feeling. Rage? Betrayal? Numbness? Everything at once. It was like my nervous system went offline for a second and rebooted with a different operating system. I put the phone back exactly where she left it and went into the bathroom, turned the shower on, and sat on the closed toilet lid just to breathe through the steam. I had to be smart. I couldn't confront her now. She'd deny it. Gaslight me. Say it was an old photo, or Peter was just a friend. I needed more than a feeling and a picture of some guy's boots. I needed clarity. Proof. And I needed it without her seeing me coming. I know how that sounds. Like I was becoming obsessive. Like I was becoming that guy. But if you've ever had your reality cracked in half by someone you trusted, then you know. It's not about vengeance. It's about not losing your grip on what's real. It's about confirming that the gut feeling you've ignored for too long wasn't paranoia. It was survival. The next morning, while she was in the shower, I took one more risk. I opened her laptop. She had left it on the desk, unlocked, her email still open. I wasn't looking for an affair. I was looking for the lie. The real one. The one hidden beneath the ones we tell ourselves every day just to stay in love. I searched her inbox for one word. Peter. And that's when I found something I wasn't prepared for. It wasn't an email from him. It was an email about him. The email wasn't from Peter. It wasn't even from an address I recognized. It was from a blank sender. Literally, the name field was empty, just a string of dots and a timestamp. No subject line. No reply option. Just one single message in her inbox, sent 3 days ago, and marked as read. The only thing in the body was a single line of text. He knows. Be careful. I sat there frozen, the cursor blinking on the screen like it was mocking me. My first thought was that someone was messing with me. But then I remembered, I wasn't supposed to be in her email. I shouldn't even know this existed. Whoever sent that, it wasn't meant for me. It was meant for her. And it was about me. I clicked on the message again, just to make sure I wasn't imagining things. I checked the sender field. Still blank. I clicked View Original. The header showed no IP address, no routing path, nothing. Whoever sent it had gone through a lot of effort to make it untraceable. And that's when the real chill hit me. What if Peter wasn't a lover? What if he was something else entirely? I sat there in our dimly lit living room, the morning light just starting to creep through the blinds, and I realized I didn't even know who my wife was anymore. What was she mixed up in? Who was sending her ghost emails? And why was there a man's photo taken in our house, on my birthday, with that same cryptic name attached to it? I heard the shower shut off, so I closed the laptop, maybe a second too fast. When she walked in, towel around her hair, she looked at me like she knew something was off. I forced a smile and said, "You're up early." She nodded and said, "Had to catch up on work stuff." Her tone was casual, but I could see it now, something flickering behind her eyes. Guilt? Fear? Calculation? I asked if she wanted coffee. She said yes. So I made it, standing there, feeling like I was brewing poison. We sat at the table in silence, both of us pretending that we weren't unraveling. I wanted to ask her, "Who is Peter? What's going on? Who sent you that email?" But I couldn't. The words would have detonated everything, and I wasn't ready for the explosion yet. Instead, I asked the dumbest question imaginable. "How's work been lately?" She froze for just a fraction of a second, but I caught it. "Same old," she said. "Lots of meetings. You know how it is." I didn't know. Irene worked in data systems for a private tech firm. I'd never fully understood what she did, but I knew she never brought work home. Not once. Until now. After she left for the day, I called in sick to my own job. I sat on the couch staring at the laptop, debating whether to go through it again. Curiosity won. I opened it and dug deeper, searching every folder I could think of. The more I looked, the stranger it got. Irene wasn't saving photos of Peter or even messages. She was saving logs. Encrypted files with timestamps, names of locations, and strings of random numbers. Each file was labeled by date. I opened one from a week ago, and what I saw made my chest tighten. It was a series of surveillance snapshots, blurry, grainy stills from what looked like security cameras. One of them was clearly taken from inside a parking garage. Another looked like a train station. And in one of the images, right in the middle of the frame, was me. I zoomed in. It was me, wearing my gray jacket, carrying the grocery bag I use every week. The photo was time-stamped 5:46 p.m., 2 Fridays ago. I hadn't even realized anyone was near me that day. I remember it because I'd bought Irene her favorite sparkling water, the one she never thanked me for. My heart was pounding so loud I could hear it in my ears. Why would she have this? Why was my wife keeping surveillance photos of me? I clicked the next file. More photos. Some from farther away. Me leaving work. Me pumping gas. Me sitting in my car outside the apartment. My hands started shaking so badly, I almost dropped the laptop. I opened the newest log, the one from the night of my birthday. It was blank. Just an empty text file with a single line. Subject did not return home. Confirmed deviation. Subject. I wasn't her husband anymore. I was a subject. I slammed the laptop shut and sat there, feeling like I'd been dropped into someone else's life. The worst part wasn't that she'd been lying. It was that I couldn't even tell what the lie was. The world started tilting in slow motion. Maybe she wasn't cheating. Maybe she was watching me, studying me. But why? And who was Peter to her? A handler? An accomplice? A partner? That night, when she came home, I pretended to be asleep. I heard her moving quietly through the apartment, putting something in her drawer, maybe the candle, maybe something else. I listened to every sound, memorizing the rhythm of her steps. And for the first time in 8 years of marriage, I realized I was afraid of my wife. I barely slept that night. When I finally drifted off around 4 a.m., my dreams were full of white noise, the kind you see on old TVs after midnight, mixed with flashes of Irene's face turning into someone else's, and doors that wouldn't open no matter how hard I pulled. I woke up cold, damp with sweat, and with this hollow certainty echoing through my chest. I couldn't stay in that apartment much longer. But I also couldn't leave. It was like being trapped inside a riddle, one where every answer just birthed 3 more questions. What did subject deviation mean? Why was she tracking my movements? What exactly was in those files? Why hadn't she ever slipped up, ever let it show? And most of all, why did I still care about someone who might not care about me at all? That morning, I didn't make breakfast. I just sat on the edge of the couch with her laptop open again, staring at the folder tree on the left side of the screen like it might rearrange itself into something that made sense. I clicked into a hidden folder marked _old_logs/ext. Inside were documents going back more than a year. One was labeled Gallagher entry tape. Gallagher was my last name. I opened it and felt the blood leave my face. Inside was a full transcript, an actual typed transcript, of a phone conversation I had with my sister 11 months ago. I remembered the call. We were talking about Dad's health, arguing about whether to move him into assisted care. It was a stressful, emotional call. A private one I had made from my car on a side street with the windows rolled up. And somehow, someone had recorded it. My eyes blurred. My breathing felt uneven. I couldn't decide if I was sweating or freezing. What the hell was this? Who was I married to? I heard her footsteps in the hall just before she opened the front door. I barely managed to slam the laptop shut and slide it under the couch before she walked in. She looked surprised to see me still in my pajamas. "You didn't go in?" she asked, setting her umbrella in the stand by the door. "No. Took the day. Migraine." I forced my voice to sound groggy. She nodded, like it was no big deal. But I couldn't stop staring at the umbrella. Burgundy with a white floral print. I had never seen it before. Irene didn't own a burgundy umbrella. She had a gray one, corporate, plain, just like her. The kind you forget 5 minutes after using. But this one, it looked expensive, new, and it sure as hell wasn't hers. Or at least, not the Irene I knew. "New umbrella?" I asked, trying to sound casual. She glanced at it. "Oh yeah? Borrowed it from Marla. Mine broke last week." No hesitation. Clean answer. Too clean. She walked past me into the kitchen, humming some tune I didn't recognize. I stood there staring at that umbrella for a good 30 seconds, trying to burn the pattern into my memory. I had this sixth sense, and I can't explain why. That umbrella didn't come from any Marla. That it didn't come from any woman at all. And that's when I decided I wasn't going to just sit there anymore. The moment she left for work, I grabbed my keys and followed. I gave her a 5-minute head start, then pulled out behind her at a safe distance, switching lanes when I thought she might see me, slowing down at lights, keeping my distance. I felt like I was in a bad movie, the kind where the guy trailing his wife has no idea what he's doing. Except in my case, it was true. Irene didn't drive to her office. She turned off the main road just past the freeway, heading into a quiet suburban neighborhood we'd never been to. I kept far back, almost losing her at one point behind a bus. She eventually pulled into the driveway of a small, white craftsman-style house with ivy growing up one side. She got out, walked to the front door, and rang the bell. A man answered. Tall, mid-40s, trim beard, casual clothes. He smiled when he saw her. She stepped inside. He didn't even look around to see if anyone was watching. But I was. I parked a block away and waited. 10 minutes passed. Then 20, 30. I walked around the block slowly, passing the house once, just to get a better look. There were no signs, no business placard, no open garage with work tools. It was a house. A normal, quiet house. But something felt wrong. Too quiet. Too perfect. I took one more lap and noticed something I had missed the first time. A security camera tucked discreetly under the awning above the door. It wasn't a cheap one either. It was industrial grade, the kind you see in banks or labs. Not normal for a residential house. Not at all. I kept walking, heart hammering, until I was far enough away to breathe again. When I got back to my car, I sat there gripping the steering wheel, trying to make sense of what I'd just seen. My wife, the woman who forgot my birthday, who kept secret logs of my movements, who received anonymous emails about me, had just entered a house monitored by a commercial-grade surveillance system and was welcomed by a man I had never seen before. And she had smiled. That's what broke me. The smile. It was soft, real, relaxed. A smile I hadn't seen from her in months. Maybe longer. That smile wasn't an act. That smile belonged to her. But not to me. I waited 2 full hours until she finally emerged, carrying nothing, saying nothing, walking to her car like she hadn't just vanished into another life. She drove away, back toward the city, back toward her job, back toward me. And I just sat there, still parked in the shadow of that house, as one realization wrapped itself around my spine and refused to let go. Irene wasn't hiding something from me. She was living something without me. I didn't go home that night. Irene texted me around 6:48 p.m., a simple dinner later, with no punctuation. As if that was supposed to reset everything. As if I hadn't watched her walk out of a stranger's house with a smile I hadn't seen in years, with an umbrella that didn't belong to her, and eyes that were too relaxed for someone living 2 lives. I didn't answer. Instead, I sat in my car on a side street near that house, staring at the little ivy-covered cottage like it might open its mouth and confess. I had no plan. Just this slow-burning determination spreading through me like heat under my skin. I knew I couldn't just ask her anymore. She'd lie. I couldn't just confront that man. He'd deny. I didn't even know his name. But I knew that whatever answers I needed weren't going to come from anyone's mouth. They were inside that house. Around 9:30 p.m., the lights inside turned off. I waited another hour, watching the porch light flicker once, then die. It was just me and the quiet. I didn't think of myself as someone capable of breaking into someone's property. I still don't. But that night, I wasn't myself. I walked the block once more, casually, like a jogger catching his breath. No movement, no voices, no sound. The street was still. And just as I passed by the side yard, something caught my eye, a stack of flat landscaping stones near the gate. Not decorative, functional. They looked just out of place enough to not belong. I knelt down and slid the top one aside, almost laughing at how cliché it all was. There it was, a small brass key with an orange rubber ring, hidden under a rock, like a setup in a spy movie that didn't even try to be subtle. My hand hesitated. There's a line you can't uncross once you step over it. I knew that, but I picked it up anyway. My hands were shaking so hard I had to wipe them on my jeans before I even got to the door. The lock clicked louder than I expected, echoing in the silence like a gunshot. I waited. Nothing stirred. No lights. No alarm. I stepped inside. The air smelled sterile, like disinfectant and paper. Not like a home. There were no family photos, no laundry baskets, no half-finished mugs of tea on the counter. Just a hallway lined with bare walls, lit by a faint nightlight. I closed the door behind me and stood there, listening to the silence. My pulse felt like it was thudding inside my ears. I moved slowly, room by room. The living room was sparse. A gray couch, a glass coffee table, a small bookshelf with no fiction, just technical manuals, surveillance theory, and obscure nonfiction titles. I took a photo of the titles with my phone. Then I moved to the kitchen. Clean. Bare. The fridge had only two things in it, bottled water and a white container with no label. But it was the room at the back of the house that stopped me. A small office, one desk, one chair, 3 monitors, and a wall covered in printed photos, some pinned, some taped. It wasn't just Irene. It was me. At least 30 different shots. At work. In my car. At the gas station. At the coffee shop where I always pretend I'm writing a novel I never started. One photo showed me walking past a shop window, with my reflection perfectly captured. I stared at that one the longest. There was also a whiteboard on the wall, filled with notes I didn't understand. Names, arrows, timelines. At the top, in red marker, were 2 words in capital letters. Phase divergence. Underneath that, in Irene's handwriting, I knew it was hers, was a sentence that didn't make any sense to me. When subject G reaches threshold event, Peter initiates containment. I felt nauseous. My name wasn't on the board, but I didn't have to guess. I was subject G, and this wasn't about an affair. This wasn't about betrayal in the way I had imagined it. It was about control, about tracking, about some plan that had nothing to do with love and everything to do with observation. And I had never known. My hands were cold. I started taking pictures of everything, quickly, methodically. I didn't know what I was going to do with them, but I knew I had to have something. Some proof. I was about to leave when I noticed the filing cabinet under the desk. Locked. Of course. I yanked it at once, then stopped. No time. I slipped out the way I came in, locking the door behind me and sliding the key right back under the same stone. My heart didn't slow down until I was 3 blocks away. I drove all night, aimlessly. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to see her face. But I also couldn't pretend anymore. Irene wasn't just hiding something personal. She was hiding something systematic, something structured, and I was the center of it. Whatever it was, I wasn't supposed to know. But now I did. And I had a feeling phase divergence had just begun. By the time I got home the next morning, the sun had already warmed the apartment through the kitchen windows. Irene was sitting at the table, drinking coffee from her usual chipped blue mug, the one she'd had since college. She didn't say anything when I walked in, just looked at me, calm, waiting, like she already knew. I dropped my keys on the counter. I didn't sit. I went to the house, I said. The one you said belonged to Marla. She didn't flinch. She just nodded slowly, and for the first time in weeks, maybe months, I saw the real Irene. Not the mask. Not the calm corporate smile. Not the stranger in my home. But her. I figured you would, she said quietly. Eventually. I stared at her. My mouth was dry. My hands were still trembling from the night before, from the photos, the whiteboard, the word subject. I had spent the entire drive back rehearsing what I was going to say. All the accusations, all the anger, but now, face to face, it all sounded wrong. Smaller. I want the truth, I said finally. No lies. No codes. Just what the hell is going on? She set her mug down gently, both hands wrapped around it like she needed something to hold her to the earth. Okay, she said. But it's not what you think. It's not cheating. It's not some conspiracy. And it's definitely not against you. I sat down. Because I knew this was going to be a conversation I didn't want to have standing. She took a long breath. Peter is my brother, she said. Half-brother. I didn't tell you because, well, we weren't close. Not for a long time. He works for a private security contractor, the kind that handles, let's just say, complicated people in complicated situations. Surveillance, protection, data reconstruction. The files you saw? They weren't about spying on you. They were about keeping you safe. I didn't respond. My brain refused to accept the words at face value. She must have seen it. I wasn't tracking you, she continued. Peter was. With my permission. Because, 3 months ago, I got a call. Someone flagged your name in an old database from a project Peter's team was tied to. Your old employer, from 5 years ago, the one that shut down quietly. Turns out, they weren't just doing cloud tech. There were people inside that company who were siphoning identity data, mapping behavioral patterns, building psychological profiles of employees without consent. I blinked. What? She nodded. You were one of their most profiled targets. Quiet. Predictable. Loyal. Ideal for long-term behavior mapping. Peter's team was contracted to recover and secure any former employees who showed divergent markers. You hit that threshold, not because you did anything wrong, but because you left the company before their systems were scrubbed, and they think you may still have something in your possession. Something dormant. Something you never even knew was inside your own device. I just stared. The words were English, but they didn't feel real. I should have told you, she said, and her voice cracked for the first time. I didn't because I was scared. Scared it would sound insane. Scared you'd look at me the way you're looking at me now. But mostly, I was scared you'd leave. I wanted to say something, but the pieces were still falling into place inside my head. The photo logs, the files, the surveillance, the phrase subject deviation. It all lined up, not as betrayal, but as protection, as preparation. They weren't watching me to hurt me. They were watching me because someone else might. So why not just tell me? I asked quietly. Because I didn't want your life to turn into this, she said, tears welling. Because you were happy. Because I thought I could fix it without pulling you into it. I sat back, exhaling for what felt like the first time in days. I let the silence hang, not with accusation anymore, but with a slow, strange understanding. You still should have remembered my birthday, I said. She laughed, softly, through her tears. I know. That was real. That was me just being stupid and distracted. No excuse. I nodded. Then she reached into her bag and pulled out a small, wrapped box. The kind you see in jewelry stores, but less fancy, less shiny. I opened it. It was a watch. Not expensive, not flashy, but simple, clean, elegant. Inside the band, there was an engraving. Time will tell, but love already knows. I looked up at her, confused. I ordered it 3 weeks ago, she said. It got delayed. I was going to give it to you that night, but I chickened out. Everything felt off. You felt distant, and I thought maybe you were the one pulling away. And there it was, the misunderstanding of a lifetime. 2 people, circling each other, thinking the other had already left. I reached across the table and took her hand. For the first time in forever, there were no lies between us. Just open air. Just the truth. We sat there for a long time. No more secrets. No more surveillance. Just us. Together. Still standing.